This is the Zelos podcast with Rocky Snyder, the show that's all about the pros behind the pros. On this week's show, I have a guest who really needs no introduction, Vern Gambetta. Vern's coaching experience spans over 50 years at all levels of competition in all different sports. He's currently the director of Gambetta Sports Training Systems. He has been the conditioning coach for several teams in Major League Soccer, as well as the conditioning consultant to the U.S. Men's World Cup soccer team. Vern is the former director of conditioning for the Chicago White Sox and director of athletic development for the New York Mets. And Vern is recognized internationally as an expert in training and conditioning for sport, having worked with world-class athletes and teams in a wide variety of sports. Well, let's get right to it.
It's great to be here, Rocky, and it's an opportunity to always talk about the profession and where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. I always relish that opportunity, and it's nice to be in California, back home, so to speak. So I'm on the same time zone, so that's nice too. So I wish I was sitting next to in Santa Cruz, but I'm up the coast a little ways in San Francisco, which is not too bad either. Quarantine, by the way, but anyway, but that's okay.
Well, we've got that beautiful California weather, blue skies out there. Hopefully the fog will burn off the Bay Area and you can go enjoy the day. But you've been doing this just to bring maybe the new coaches and trainers and therapists up to speed. You got started at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and that was some time ago. But what brought you into this field? Yeah, you and me both. We won't have to say dates.
Just to go back a little bit, I played football at Fresno State College then, and it was, believe it or not, I was a 192-pound offensive lineman. Obviously, it was a different era, and we had no strength and conditioning coaches, no guidance in off-season programs, and so I had to make myself into an athlete, and so I explored all the different avenues about how to get faster, how to get stronger, how to get more agile. And so the journey really started right at my senior year in high school in 1964. I graduated in 68. I played 3 years, one game, quit after one game into my senior year. And I didn't have a great experience in football and vowed that I wouldn't have anything to do with football. I loved track. I took a theory of track and field class at Fresno State and fell in love with the sport. And the instructor was Red Estes, the assistant track coach, later to be head track coach. And he said, well, if you really want to learn how to coach all these events, why don't you do decathlon, which is 10 events in 2 days. And so that shows how smart I am. Oh, okay, I'll try that. And so when I went to UCSB to get my teaching credential, there was a group of decathletes training there. So I just fell in there. And the beauty of track and field is they're welcoming. And it was a terrific education. I got to train with a world record holder, Olympic gold medalist. I was nowhere near that point. So, that was the start of my education as an athlete and as a coach. And, and then but strength and conditioning wasn't in a field. In 1969, when I started coaching, I was a track coach. And as a track coach, you got your athletes stronger, you got them faster, you got them more flexible, you actually rehabbed injuries, you had to do everything. You had to be the jack of all trades, actually a consummate generalist. And I never even thought that much about strength and conditioning until I got my master's at Stanford. No strength and conditioning coaches. Go back and coach at Santa Barbara High School. I had a really good athletic program. We had a really great track and field and cross country teams, a couple of national champions and things like that. But then what started to happen is first the soccer coach came to me and said, well, what do we need to do to get fit? And then the volleyball coach came to me, and then the basketball coach, and then the football coach. And then I left there and went to Cal Berkeley with women's track and cross country until 1982. And it was the same thing. The volleyball coach came to me and said, well, I saw you, he was down at the track and he saw us do some jump drills. And so that really led me into this, deeper and deeper into this. It's the methodology, track and field, run, jump, throw, and being able to endure sufficiently and explode when you're tired. So, that led me down this journey that continues today. So I'm 52 years into it. I'm more energized and excited now than I've been probably in the last 5 years. I live in Sarasota, Florida. I'm really doing a lot of work with swimming. I have for about the last 20 years. I've done a lot kept in touch and worked with a few individual track and field athletes, some world-class track and field athletes, but did a lot with volleyball and worked with pro beach volleyball players until Megan, got married, has a baby, and chose not to go on. But I've been doing swimming, and we have a great club in Sarasota, some great coaches and kids. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing dryland training for swimming there. I go down, get to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and but it's a great bunch of kids. Really been fun because it's energized me again. If you wanna get energy, get around developing athletes, 14 to 18 that have focus and dedication, and it's pretty neat. So that's hopefully long-winded answer, but anyway. So
that's great, because there's several trainers and coaches out there that can experience burnout, and after doing it for so long, I know that I've gone through those periods of time, and just by changing a little bit of what I do in regards to maybe service or coaching and so on, it re-inspires. So 5 years ago, you say, for the last 5 years, you've been reinvigorated and re-inspired. Is that why? Because you're working with younger athletes, or is something else?
Well, yeah, I mean, you need new challenges. And I love athletics. I love swim. I love the real basic nature of them, that the stopwatch doesn't lie, the tape measure doesn't lie. I got doing more and more with team sports. Now, I was in Australia with rugby union and rugby league in January, and that. I don't know if it's so much burnout. It's just a different challenge, and like I said, going back and getting to work with the developmental athletes, looking at our age group in our senior group, what we call our national team group, it's roughly 14 to 19. We've got some kids that just graduated from high school that are taking a gap year, that are potential Olympians. And, you really see the difference in gender, where the girls 14, 15 are really ahead of the boys. And then at 16, 17, I mean, there's 3 boys that I Monday morning when I was saying, like, how much have you grown since May? One kid's grown 3 inches. I mean, and these kids are, they're just such open books in terms of training, and they bought in, they're all in, so it's neat. No, it's just another point in my career. I mean, if I say this a lot, and people think, God, you're getting early onset dementia or something. But if I had it to do over again, I'm not sure I really would have left Santa Barbara High School or high school coaching. You kind of have the stars in your eyes, the big time, and certainly I don't regret getting to work with some of the teams and the individual athletes that I've worked with. I've learned a lot, but my fondest memories always seem to be of the developmental athlete, So anyway, I'm not going to apologize for that. That's just the way it is. So. Yeah.
No, I got to experience that a bit the last couple of years. My daughter's just finishing out at Santa Cruz High, but last year and the year before, she was on the football team, and the coaches were kind enough to allow me to come into the gym and onto the field, and we started doing some things that they weren't accustomed to, or they weren't familiar with, and suddenly they were able to move in a different way, get more power and more athleticism, more agility, and so on, and just from a little tweak and so on, they drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. They bought in, like you say, and once they're bought in, there's nothing you can say that they don't hear. And that's the most amazing thing, because you get other athletes. You've worked with World Cup soccer team. You've worked with the rugby teams. You say, I mean, you have spanned quite a few different sports, and I'm sure that you've found certain athletes that are, I won't say the prima donnas, but their ego can sometimes get in the way of their learning, and you just don't see that as much with a developing athlete. I think you'd agree.
No, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky though, the high profile people, and I'm not going to name names. I'm not into name dropping and that. I think a lot of it is I had a long conversation this morning with one of my mentors in England, and we were talking about this. If you work on your communication and you relate to them, they're fine. And look, certainly with the high profile athletes and the high profile teams, you have to prove yourself, and I have no problem with that. I went from track and field into baseball. I'd never played baseball, and I just tried. Like Carlton Fisk was great. Said I wouldn't name names, but mentioned the Hall of Fame. But he's into training. And so I figured, shoot, let's just pick his brain. I'm going to learn everything I can about conditioning a catcher from one of the greatest catchers of all time, and Tom Seaver, who just passed away, he didn't want to do any of the stuff that we were doing, but he said, if I were starting out my career, that's what I'm doing. But he was 42 years old when, and tip my hat to you, Tom, rest in peace. You dance with who brought you to the dance, too. So yeah, it's been neat. It's been a wonderful journey, and I hope there's a few more years to go. I just have a new grandchild, and my goal is to be able to see her graduate from high school at least. So that would do okay 15 years from now or 18 years from now. So
how fantastic would that be? Oh, that'd be great. And personally speaking, as a kid who grew up outside of Boston as a Red Sox fan, when you mention Carlton Fisk's name, I get a little bit of a problem there, but I'll get past it. Game 7, 1975, Red Sox and Cincinnati Reds. Yeah. It still hurts to this day, but that's okay.
He was such a hard worker. And then he bought into the things that at age 41, he'd done a lot of heavy lifting, and he was looking for an alternative. And whether you call it functional training or whatever you want to call it, he bought into what we were doing and basically lengthened his career. So and at the end of your career as a professional athlete, that's when you're making the most money. And he played until he was 46 years old as a catcher. Which is a tribute to the work that he did, so that's pretty neat. He's one of my, I don't hold a lot of professional athletes up on a pedestal, but he's a special dude. He's a special guy.
I mean, to go that far into a world of such high competition is remarkable. But you bring up something that's one thing I would like to talk about with you is the heavy weight training that we started off in the early years, because that was one of the go-tos that we would just be doing periodized programs. What's your 1RM, and develop programs that were mainly about heavy weight training. And for my professional and personal experience is that the wear and tear of the body through excessive means of weight training really reduce athletic potential, especially later on at the winter of your career. And I think there is a trend emerging now, and I'm hopeful for that. And I think you and I are probably in the same kind of category, that we're promoting alternative means of strength and conditioning and not just that heavy weight training. Do you see that happening in the industry?
Yeah, more and more. It seems to be polarized, though. It's like either or, and there's nothing wrong with, I use the umbrella term strength training, and weight training is part of that. Olympic lifting, powerlifting, bodybuilding, those are all subsets. And each of them potentially and does have a place in a program. And, as I said, I couldn't have played a down of college football without doing some heavy lifting. And yet, I learned very quickly when I transitioned to competing in the decathlon that it could be a detriment to me. I spent too much time, my first 2 years training for decathlon, still trying to get numbers in the weight room, which was counterproductive, because you had any mass you put on, you had to lift over the bar. And so that had a huge influence on me, what some people call functional training. But if you go back to my generation and maybe the subsequent generation. I'm 70. I'll be what am I? I'll be 74 in January. We grew up active. I mean, we didn't have, because I went to parochial schools, we didn't have daily PE, but we had daily recess, 2 recesses, and we played after school, and we played, we climbed and all of that, and I think this is the thing that we have to recognize with the young athletes today. Typically, a typical roadmap is the athlete will come into high school, they're 9th grader, say it's a boy, wants to play football. The first thing they do is start to load up the spine, that kind of stuff. And they're secreting testosterone by the bucket, and they can overcome some of this. But what happens is you see those athletes really, really kind of level off. Like, where are you going to go? Instead of my principle, body weight before external resistance. If you can't do X number of pull-ups and push-ups and rope climb and step-ups and body weight squats, you have to earn the right to lift heavy. And there's a very, like, our swimmers. The other day doing dumbbell complexes, boys, well, no, the girls too. She did, I think, like 7,000 pounds of total weight, lifting anywhere from 20 to 35 pound dumbbells, and that, you say, geez, that's a lot of weight. Yeah, it is, but they're never loading their spine. My rule of thumb is never sacrifice range of motion for resistance. So if the weight's too heavy, you go down. And I think what happens is all of us, females and males, we're pretty indestructible. We think we are when we're in our teenage years. And even into your early 20s, if you're a college athlete or a professional athlete, or you want to be a good weekend athlete. And so people keep loading in searching of these numbers instead of, my question is, what is the strength? Are you developing strength you can use? And you pay the piper. You pay the piper starting in your 30s and then your 40s and 50s. Fortunately, I did a lot of stupid heavy lifting, and I've paid for it, but not with surgery. And I don't know if the arthritis has to do with in the neck. That's from football. But so I'm with you on this. I'm very cognizant of this. And you look at a lot of these professional athletes, professional football players, especially, these guys they're cripples by the time they're 28. And yes, the game is tough, but they're see, one of my axioms is I want to use building a complete athlete. And I don't want to replicate stress of the game. I want to prepare you for the stress of the game and practice. And you say, well, that's double talk. No. If the only way you're going to get better as a football, basketball, tennis player, or whatever, is to be more proficient, in that. But if I come over here and you're with me in the weight room, or you're out on the field and we're doing speed development work or something like that, and I'm trying to replicate what you're doing, I'm just adding stress to stress instead of preparing you for the stress of your activity. And I think that's a big thing that we've been able to do now. And again, this is at the risk of sounding shameless self-promotion. We don't have shoulder problems with our swimmers. We don't work on the shoulder. We work on the connection of the shoulder to the hip, and we didn't have shoulder problems with the White Sox. I was director of conditioning there for 9 years. And people, people just didn't understand it, but the shoulder is a link in the kinetic chain, right? And you always work the whole kinetic chain. It starts at the foot, the joints in the foot, and goes up and that. So it's, the body's complex, but the concepts are simple.
Yes. And there's out of all the movements that we're able to achieve as a human form, it really just boils down to just a few basic movements and then we combine those movements together to get almost an infinite range of things we can do. But really, like you say, even though it's complex, it boils down to such simplicity, including like progression that you were kind of mentioning in terms of you don't want to load the body until it can learn to move. You don't want to sacrifice range of motion for resistance. And how I look at that spectrum of progression is, do they need assistance with the movement? Can I take that assistance away and have them be proficient with it with their own body? And then once they achieve that, can I create some external resistance outside of that in some form or other, whether it's changing their position or adding load in the form of bands or dumbbells or kettlebells or whatever. And I think that for the most part, a lot of people that are, say, in the industry or young trainers and coaches, we jump across the first two and we just jump right into external resistance, kind of what you were saying. Yeah, there's the other, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the other thing you were talking about is like when we were growing up, we had recess or we had PE or whatever the case. We got outside and played. I remember my dad got tired of hearing the screen door slam back and forth every time I go in and out of the house. He's like, one or the other, either stay in or get out. And I stayed out and I played all day. And that was functional fitness at its finest. A lot of alliteration there. But really what it was is that you and I came into the gym at a higher level of structural integrity than the young athletes today that you're developing right now. And I'd like to kind of just briefly talk about that. Like the programs that we're designing today have to have some consideration for the fact that each passing year with technology, the kids and the athletes that are coming in and that are progressing on to professional or college level are structurally less stable the moment they see you. How do you, you recognize that?
We're asking them to write the great American novel, and they can't, and they barely know how to write a sentence, in terms of physical literacy. Can you bend, extend, reach, pull, step, all of these kinds of things. And everybody now has rediscovered physical literacy, and they're making it so mechanistic that these kids, the athletes look like robots. And what you have to do is you have to set up situations where they explore movement and solve movement problems. And then you give them increasingly more difficult movement problems to solve. And sometimes it's easy to chase external load and to slow things down. But yet everybody will say, we're talking about athletes here, speed wins. So why is the first thing that we do is slow you down? I mean, it doesn't make sense, and we teach kids how to run like, I want you to run like a deer, not like a damn robot, so we teach drills. And go watch little kids play. I was walking back, I went to walk around Golden Gates Park, and his mother lifted this little, probably he was about 2.5, up onto this wall. And he's walking along, and this kid had the biggest smile on his face. The mom never said, be careful or anything like that. She just kind of held his hand. And I'm thinking, I'm always looking at it with jaded eyes of a coach or something like that, but yeah, let's let them understand the dimensions of their body and recognize that these movements are natural movements, and let them explore the dimensions of these natural movements through play, and then gradually formalize it. And my mantra is body weight before external resistance. Like you asked, I've seen this with pretty high level professional football players. Ask them to crawl. Just do a bear crawl. Get down and give me a bear crawl, which is basic fundamental training for a quarterback, a pitcher, a tennis player, or a swimmer. I'm telling you guys, there was smoke coming out of their ears. They were trying to, they're just so programmed into following, you have to do step 1 and step 2 and step 3, rather than let them, explore dimensions of movement. I said that a couple of times.
Is that what you mean by movement problems? Because you mentioned movement problems and it just struck a chord. I'm like, wow, that's a great term. So is that an example of it, or do you have others that you could throw out?
Well, here's a great example. Okay, the myth that's still out there: don't let your knee go past your toe when you squat. Well, let's go watch television today and watch an outdoor show. Don't watch a sport movement. Watch, your knee's going to go past your toe. The key is your knee has to go past your toe with a degree of control. Okay. So how do you, what do you do? Do you teach the knee to go past the toe? You don't talk about it. So it's simple. Okay. If you and I were facing each other, all I would do is I'd say, I want you to put your hands on your hips, stand with weight on both feet. You're gonna step with your right foot, and you have to touch my hand wherever I put it. That's a movement problem. So I'll put it right in front of you, 6 inches in front, touch it, step back. Good, perfect. Okay, and then I'll move it 45 degrees to the right, maybe 18 inches. So now you have to step across the midline. Then I'll move it out to the left. You have to open. And then I'll move it to the side so it's lateral. And then I'll keep moving it further and further and further and further out until you reach the point of, in quote, no return, right? Where you don't have the eccentric strength to be able to return. Fine, you just solved the movement problem. We found out what length of lunge you can do. Never said anything about what you can't do. I'm interested in finding the dimensions of what you can do. You know, same thing with squatting. People say, oh, you know, like we have everybody I work with now, and it'll be on our next Gain Masterclass as our intro thing. It's just a squat series. It's 7 different squatting movements, and it's funny you say squats for swimmers. These kids can't squat, and every time they go into the wall, it's a full squat and push off, and you know, shapes. We call it shapes. Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't care if the knee has to go past the toe in a full squat, okay? But people say, well, you got to do wall squats. These kids have sore knees. No, I'll just modify the squat. We have one boy that's grown 3 inches. Came to me the other day, my knees are really sore. Fine, we're going to do ski squats. You're going to do frontal plane lunges. You're going to do side lunges, and you're going to do lateral step ups. And I after each set, my knees feel fine. Good. So I said, you're going to do that. You might do that the next 4 months. No problem. Anytime we do legs, you know, and that. So again, it's just Lynn Davies, who was a 1964 Olympic champion in the long jump. The world record then was around 27 feet, 2 inches or something. And he said, you know, this always stuck with me. I heard this in an interview. He said, you know, the world record would be a lot farther if we had to jump over a 28-foot ditch. And I thought, now, with what I know now, is he was talking about it as a movement problem. You know, I mean, you would do, and you watch a kid try to jump over a water puddle. You know, we teach all these things about set up the jump and all of that. They just do it naturally because they don't want to get their feet wet, you know. So there's a lot of things that I think we've gotten, maybe we've outsmarted ourselves to a certain degree. You know, the body, if we know the body, you know, and you have your methodology and you know the body, we know the dimensions through which the body can move, recognize that there are extreme survival situations where people have been in those situations and the body can go sort of beyond which are, you know, limits, but there are no limits. And then think about logical progressions, you know, easy to hard. We have multiple planes, we have multiple joints. It's just so much more fun. I call it fundamental with, you know, FUN, the fun part of fundamental, capitalized. The athletes buy into it because it feels better to them. And those of you like the two volleyball players I work with, one was in the Big Ten and one was in the SEC, and they were both subjected to heavy lifting programs. And these women, I knew one, Megan, I've gotten really close to, and her husband and the little daughter and that. And Megan, she was a teammate of my daughter's in youth soccer before she grew. 6'3" with a 37-inch inseam. So just think about putting weight on her spine, you know. And she said the whole time in college, I was just my back was always sore, my knees were always sore, and 6 months of doing what we're talking about, and she goes, this is really this. I don't feel all these aches and pains that I used to feel. And her jump improved, her movement improved. She leaned up, all the things that you want to do in a program, So it's a challenge. I don't want to say it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science in the sense, because if I can figure it out, sure as hell ain't rocket science. But
No, it's more like a murder mystery. That's how I look at it. It's like there's clues, and we just got to look at the clues and what are they telling you, and can you solve this? Like the movement problem. I love that thought, that concept of can we create a solution? Can they create, better yet, can they create a negotiation or a strategy in which their body is going to solve this element?
I like the idea of strategy, because the strategy can be a progression, and the progression isn't the same for everybody, is it? I mean, you can start 10-step progression. You can start at 5, and I have to start at 2, but we're going to end up at the same place, And but I also think that what we need to do a better job. Yes, we need to do a better job of presenting movement problems that have logical solutions. Key point. And we need to ask better questions. I'd say, if you were to say to me, Vern, what's the biggest thing you've learned in the last 10 years of your career, is I get better if I ask better questions. Better questions of you, the athlete, better questions of your professional colleague. And that's it's Sherlockian, it's Sherlock Holmes in a sense.
It really is.
But the obvious is right there, but we don't look for the obvious. We look for the exotic, and that.
Yeah, we often, we consider it interviewing the body. Like we can interview the athlete, and I'm not talking mentally, but I'm talking actually the physical frame, although there are times where we get into the mental aspect of it. But when putting programs together for our clients, for our athletes, we're actually using every single movement as a way of asking the body, what do you like to do? Where do you prefer to go? Where don't you want to go? Where are those dark zones that there's something about it that you don't want to go there? And can we bring you safely there and back again, so that now you have a new experience and you have new movements at your disposal that make you much more proficient, efficient, and all around better at moving through three-dimensional space. So I love that concept you bring up, and it's definitely, it's not lost on me.
Take it past athlete. It's been interesting walking around this area, San Francisco. Look, I said I'll be 7. I keep thinking I don't know. 74 is just a funny number. I have trouble saying it. But I'm seeing it. It's an aging population. This is an aging population. I see a lot of older people walking around and that kind of stuff. And it's hilly. I mean, this is my calves are telling me this, Toto, this ain't Florida. This is not Sarasota, Florida, where it's flat. And I just go, what we've done is and I know you work at a gym and you have your own facility in that, but we've created this idea that you can't get better at moving unless you have a gym and machines and these kinds of things, it's look at your environment and say, what do you have to do to be able to be a better mover in your environment? Is there a step that you have to step down? Because we know falls with elderly people are, that's a big thing. Well, then you better do some step downs. Like that's pretty logical. So start with a 2-inch step down and build up to a 6-inch step down, and that's the movement problem. And then you've got to do it when somebody distracts you. So your head's looking over your left shoulder and you're stepping down with your right leg. Those are simple things. You look at the mechanism of ACL injuries in a basketball player running down a court. And so they're running, the ball's on the basket's to their left. Their left foot hits, they look over their left shoulder, their knee goes into valgus, they catch the ball and they tear their ACL. Well, how many times did you start that out with lunges? And then how many times did you do bounds where you turned to one direction and caught a med ball.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
how
you're
many
doing a
times?
distance to the
Well, and how many times did the coach say, "Don't let your knee go over your toes," or "Don't let your knee go valgus"? I mean,
oh
that we hear all the
wow, oh
time.
my
I
God.
mean, if you don't let it go in there, how does it know what to do when you need it to go in there?
Exactly.
And
So you
I
do it
think
under
that's why we're
control.
seeing a lot of ACL issues.
Oh, there's no question. That and over-engineered shoes.
Yes.
You know, you know, you mentioned it before we went on. Pronation is natural. Okay, that's force reduction. It starts at the foot. So if you mess up the timing of force reduction, somewhere up the chain, you're going to pay for it. You might have solved it at the foot, but the body, again, the body's smart, and it's going to say, you know, you really pissed me off, and I'm going to show you that I'm the king here. You know, so I'm going to tear your ACL, or I'm going to tear your hip labrum, or you know, something like that. You know, so look, I don't have all the answers, and I'm learning all the time. I've got an incredible network of people that I can interact with through Game Network, and then subsequently, aside from that, and it's and nobody's put up on a pedestal as an expert. You know, so we're all challenging each other to be better and say, okay, now, like somebody sent me this particular exercise the other day, and I always say it's more than the exercise. And I wrote back and he said, I knew what you were going to say. And I said, well, okay, what's the context? What part of the training year are you in? What's the objective of the exercise? It's a cool exercise, really a cool exercise. I love it, but it's an exercise, right? And so I call it the YouTube phenomenon. Just put in put in lunges on YouTube, and you're gonna see people doing lunges with a kettlebell in their grip in their mouth, and and somebody juggling burning swords but okay, why would you juggle burning swords? Well, I live in Sarasota, Florida, where it used to be headquarters of the Ringling Barn and Butter and Circus. So maybe that's what you do. I don't know. So I don't work with that population. But
Oh, good point. Yeah, and exercise is a tool, and depending upon what tool you need for the time, you're going to pull that out of your toolbox. But if I need a wrench, I'm not going to grab an awl or a screwdriver. I'm going to grab what I need. So exercises are just that. Now, you bring up a couple of good things. And for the aspiring trainers, the coaches, therapists that are out there, you have mentioned your age a couple times now, but you've also mentioned the fact that you have mentors. And that is something that is really important to get across, is that no matter how long you've been in the industry, me 30 years, you 52, we both have mentors, and probably more than one for that matter. And then so let's just, if you don't mind, what's the importance of a mentor for you? And have you always had mentors?
Yes, right. Literally right from the get-go. And well, first it was my high school basketball coach who, when I graduated, asked me to come back during the summer and help with the summer league teams when I was playing football in college. And his lessons were stuck with me. Yeah, always had mentors. Some of them don't, some of them I'm real close to in terms of, personal friendship relationships. And some of them are, I've read every book that they've done. I've been to presentations, things like that, but I would still count them as mentors. And it's really important. And that and it's not, again, none of them have ever tried to say they knew everything. Today, in today's world, people want, like somebody the other day, I saw a thing, honest to God, they had 32 letters after their name in terms of certifications. And that's not literally, I counted them because I couldn't believe it ran down into the next line. And to me, that's not mentoring. Find somebody that you can communicate with, that you can trust. It could actually be a peer. I mean, some of my best mentors have been people, that we've grown together. I have a good friend, John Araldi, in Santa Barbara. I got him started in coaching in 1975. We talk twice a week, not always about coaching now, but Yeah, once a week, we'll toss out, John, what do you think about this? I'm trying this, and he, because we've known each other, so it's not just that, it's also a sounding board, and things like that. So I think that's really, really important if you can, and find people that are real and genuine and not trying to take your money, and things like that. People are surprised. I mean, you call my number at home, and somebody said, well, can I talk to Vern Gambetta? And I said, well, you're speaking to him. And they go, well, we thought, no, I mean, I'm just another guy. I'm very fortunate to have been some places, and we had a great half an hour conversation, and I probably learned more than he learned from me just by asking him some of the things that he was looking at, like why, where did you learn this? Where did you come up with this idea? I'm not sure I agree with that. It's probably not really correct. You need to think about that, and I'm a big reader. I haven't calculated. Last year I read 151 books, and I'm reading studies and all the time. I'm not saying that to brag. I don't even know what it's going to be this year because I haven't traveled, and I'm reading like 3 books a week or 4. So, but read as much as you can. Get outside your field. Don't just read training stuff. Get off some of these closed-minded forums where it's intellectual incest, where people are just passing around the same ideas. Challenge yourself to get out there.
But we don't have to turn this into the Oprah Book Club, but I'm curious, what book's standing out this year that you just really enjoyed within or outside the industry?
It was written by a professor at UCSB, and I picked it up when I was in the bookstore in Santa Barbara on my way back from Australia. I was there visiting our family. I want to say it's Physical Competence or Physical, and it is a brilliant book. It is a brilliant book. He's a neurophysiologist and a neurosurgeon, a professor at UCSB, and it's gotten basically he talks about how the body learns and that, but it's all through. He takes backpacking trips up in the Sierras, and he talks about these kinds of things. Hands down, everybody should read it. It's terrible. I can't remember I'm terrible with titles, yeah, and it's funny. You're going to find ideas about how to communicate and that from things that are fairly far afield. I try to find. I'm really into reading things about people that are really good at what they do, whether it's in the arts, and that. I think we could learn a lot in our field by looking at dance, all the various disciplines of dance. That's one of the things that somehow when this gets sorted out that I really keep saying I want to do. I want to explore, dance and that. So I'll send you the name of that book. It's embarrassing not to know the title, but I really highly recommend it.
Not a problem. And on the same note with mentoring and learning information from others, you have established the GAIN Network, or GAIN program, which stands for Gambetta Athlete Improvement Network, and Gambetta Athletic Improvement Network. And I'd love to kind of just talk a little bit about that. You've got, for those that are enjoying podcasts and listening to them, you also have the GAIN Cast, which is yourself and others talking on a podcast about athletic improvement. So what got you started with that, and where is it now?
Well, yeah, it's a logical outgrowth of the seminar that I did for many years called Building and Rebuilding the Complete Athlete. And it was a 2-day seminar. And we'd always used to say, geez, Jeff, what would happen if we just scratched the surface? It was a survey course, and it was athletic trainers, physios, physical therapists, coaches, doctors, chiropractors, and some athletes. And we taught it regularly up until 2004 around the country, around the world. And I'd always say, jeepers, what would happen if we could do this for a week and do a coaching course like I had seen in various countries that I'd been able to take part in. So we started this 13 years ago. We did it in person. It's 5 days, total immersion. And yeah, it's Gambetta Athletic Improvement Network, but look, I'm not going to, the G is hopefully not always going to be, it's not about me. And we've been able to bring faculty in that are world renowned in all the various areas, whether it's sports science or coaching and that. And we get people from all over the world. Now, obviously, the last 8 years, we've had it at Rice University in Houston, Texas, and we do it in June, but we couldn't do it anymore. So, and we're not even sure about 2021. So what we started, and you can maybe I appreciate this, and people, if you're interested, we've started the GAIN Masterclass, which is once a month. So we bring the experts in, and we start each morning out in Houston with what we call Movement Madness. So it's really cool. It's 3 stations, 20 minutes at a station, where it's active learning, and you're coached in various movements. So the GAIN Masterclass, instead of being able to do it, we have video, and I'm going to go through this next month. It's going to be that squat series and show why we do it. And then this next month, it's Martin Bingesser, my colleague, and I are going to go into all aspects of periodization, and we have a panel, and then we have breakout rooms. So it's about an hour and 20 minutes, a master class, and we'll do 12 of those. Next month, we'll have Keith Barr from UC Davis, Dr. Keith Barr, who's doing some of the most cutting edge research and work on strengthening ligaments and tendons. Fascinating stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So, yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to go back and have it in person if we can't. Like I said, I'm cautiously, I guess I'm more realistic. I'm afraid that 2021, we're not out of the woods yet, by June. I wish I could say that unequivocally, but we're almost in November now. So anyway, that's what it's about. And the whole key to it, Rocky, is that it's about networking. So we have people from all over the world. And now we're going to have a GAIN Offshoots deep dive. We're going to have GAIN PE. We had a deep dive in Europe before the coronavirus thing on foundational strength, which is like a day and a half workshop type of thing, and it's really tapping into the resources that I've been able to develop over the last 52 years, and people just it's a living network, and that's the best way I could express it. And it's so cool, to watch the network work and grow, and to see the guy that was sitting in the back row at GAIN standing on the sideline at the Super Bowl, to see another guy running out on the field and working on a player in Rugby World Cup, but also, the local high school coach or trainer or something like that. And they all interact. And think about this. So you've got acknowledged probably as one of the top, maybe we'll say 10 coaches in the world, Eddie Jones, who's the coach of English rugby. The Americans probably don't know him, but the rest of the world do. Eddie comes to GAIN last year and is sitting in the audience. Think about it.
That's
He's
impressive.
sitting in the audience, and taking notes. And then he goes out and talks to people and said, you got to go to GAIN. I learned more in those 5 days than I had in the last 5 years. Whoa, Eddie, and that's pretty cool, and so if you can't tell by the tone of my voice, it's exciting to me because I love learning, and it's opportunities to mentor people, to meet people from, all over, all different parts of the country, parts of the world, and different disciplines. So pretty cool.
Oh, it sounds fantastic. Yes. When things open up, I would love to be in the audience right beside him. That would be fantastic. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this hour with you, and I can't thank you enough for just welcoming me into your world right now, especially with the grandbaby just a few days away of you getting to see her, and I really hope that goal comes true of you just watching her graduate and all that. And I can't imagine that not happening. That's just been fantastic.
I'm going to get fitter than I've ever been. I got to see her again last night from afar. and I go, and I started 3 days ago, and I'm going, my God, you forget how much changes in 3 days. And I'm going, you gotta stay really fit so that you can watch this kid grow, and that. So no, it's exciting. This whole thing, look, we have big challenges ahead, but I think we're making some really good headway in terms of learning better what we can do to get people better, in all veins. So appreciate the opportunity to be on. It's very good.
Oh, it is my pleasure, sincerely.
And that's going to be a wrap for this episode of Zelos. Now, if you missed last week, we had Bill Parisi from Parisi Speed School on, so be sure to go and check that episode out. And next week, I invite Mike Potenza on, who is the strength and conditioning coach for the San Jose Sharks, the NHL team. So be sure to tune in next week for Zelos. Until then, thanks for listening.